The new car too. You can make sushi.
Tyler and finally, I'm like doing it. And then
Why is it mirrored?
It
does that, yeah.
So now what we're doing is we're
Yeah.
cutting that off.
But I think it will show correctly on.
Our truck.
I think it just says that because you don't use it. It's expected that too. Right?
And we're gonna move it. I just,
I know that you canter, and so you do a lot of these chants and everything.
Yeah, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask, is I know because how much knowledge you had about how they're arrived. Because that's been fascinating, I've been in lots of churches where, that was a thing, and I never really knew like how it was like, really
I'm just giving you Andy. I'm doing what he tells me to do.
well, and I mean, I think that,
He must know.
I think that a lot of people, it's in a book, and it's just like, well, you do this one, right? This is what you do. And so, but it's helpful to know sort of where it came from.
Right. But why it was picked for that is hard. To me, it just seems like they need something to do with their time. They're in a monastery also. I'm wondering if some of it's just like work for the sake of work.
Yeah,
Systemization for the sake of that.
But I think it's that. I think it's so that it's not exactly the same all the time.
Yeah.
And so it's not stale for the people who are hearing it.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also, I still think it's important that the seasons have different moods.
Yeah.
And I said affect, and I thought, well, maybe that wasn't the right term because I don't want kind of conflates the thing.
But like, certain modes might seem more like an hallelujah, like they're too happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in the Catholic Church, they go between singing modern composed stuff and then chants. I mean, sometimes we do a Gregorian chant, sometimes it's something written recently. So that's a little.
And then we're doing
But I've already learned so much from this. It's incredible.
We barely got I don't know what that's called. And I sang solo, right?
So I didn't do the reading. But this is saying that Zerlino abandoned the names of the notes altogether and just went toward the number system.
Right. And at the end, actually, I found it really interesting because there was this numbering that Zerlino had, and there was this numbering that somebody else had, and there was this that they called it. Yeah, you will. Because I think that was really interesting because I thought, well, this is part of why roads are so confusing. Because, you have so many different orders.
But the fact that you put C first is very, very significant, and it influences.
No, it has to be quite close for it to work. So, yeah, but
extension cord?
yeah.
Are you running well?
I think I'm okay. Let's see.
Extension cord in the GA?
I don't know. But I was talking to,
I think I'll be fine.
about how Zerlino reorienting it around is, I thought, yeah, that's a really interesting thing. I assume that it is, and he said, yes, it is. That's an example of like where the descriptive and the prescriptive are sort of interrelated because he's doing this because he's hearing, but it's also he's writing it as pretty distinct. And I thought, well, that's really interesting how that affects things.
Yeah. Who was that in there again? He worked in Venice?
Yeah, he was the guy
I'm gonna start another list.
Okay.
So just put your name and. Good afternoon. We have a few more minutes before the session starts, but I've passed out a sign-in sheet. We'd like to collect the names of students who participate in these events so we keep track of record of how we're doing. There is a place where you can put your email if you would like to hear more about our events, but you can also find about our stuff online on Facebook. We have a Facebook page, and you can also follow the hashtag Peake Colloquium. And there's some snacks and drinks before we start, so if you would like to get some energy, please help yourself.
Oh, there we go.
We're also live broadcasting this event on YouTube. So if you have friends who cannot be here, please let them know this is an option. Okay, good afternoon. Hi, my name is Kunio Hara, and I will teach music history. This is Dr. John McKay, and he is a music theory professor here. And this is the Luise E. Peake's Music and Culture Colloquium series. We have almost monthly events, series of events about music history, musicology, and musicology. And today's event, of course, is the workshop or session on informational session on preparing for graduate comprehensive oral exam. We have some informational presentation at the beginning, and then we'll open the floor for question and answers if you have any. So please keep those in mind. I'd like to also welcome Dr. Andy Gowan and Tracy Kerr from the graduate office who has come here to share their information about the exam. So let's start with their presentation. So thank you so much for coming, and please welcome.
So why do these exams exist? Well, first of all, they are required by the USC Graduate School. Every graduate student on this campus must have some kind of final comprehensive sort of examination. It exists in many forms. What we do is a fairly standard practice. So the oral examination, or in the case of doctoral students, a written examination followed by an oral examination it's a fairly mainstream way of achieving this goal. So it's required by not just our graduate school, but the various accreditation bodies, the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, also requires such a thing. It has some nice purposes. I said, but beyond the fact that we are evaluating you as an individual, but we're also evaluating our program. And so the kind of the of these comprehensive exams help us to know whether our theory and history teaching is in fact accomplishing what we would want it to do, because we have ample opportunities then to sample your knowledge and to see if you're learning what we want you to know. So why do we have to do this? Well, because we have to. So it's not an optional thing, but it has some good outcomes. So when do you schedule this exam? Well, for master's students, it's generally going to be in your last semester. For doctoral students, it is generally at the end of your theory and history course taking, which usually coincides with your other courses in your major area as well. So doing it earlier than that leaves you at risk of not having covered some of the material that might be included in the exam. So what do you have to finish before you schedule an exam? Well, you need to have completed the program of study. How many of you have completed your program of study? Okay, quite a few. So for master's degree students, really for all students, it's kind of at the halfway point. All right, so at this point, you will have completed about half of your coursework. You're able to project what else and when you will take it. So the program of study is a list of the courses that you are presenting that you will complete in order to meet the requirements of the degree. So you put down everything, those courses that you have done, have completed, those courses in which you are currently working, and the courses you plan to take. And so it also has a planning feature as well. But you need to have that done before you take your comprehensive exam. In fact, I guess we don't let you take your comprehensive exams until you've done that. So, there. If you had a need to remediate a music history course by exam, by taking the proficiency exam, then those should be accomplished before you schedule your comprehensive exam. Doctoral students, you actually will have to fill out a form requesting your committee for both your comprehensive exam and for your document. And so we'll have to have that committee form in hand before we can schedule. And the foreign language / research course requirement for doctoral students should also be accomplished before you can schedule the exam. I won't talk a lot about scheduling because Tracy will do that. I will talk a little bit about what can go wrong in the scheduling process. Well, so you're going to tell us a range of dates when you'd like to do this, and Tracy will share those with the faculty. Sometimes the faculty member is simply not here. So you're faced then with the choice of either doing the exam at a different time in a different week, or choosing a different faculty member to be on the panel. Most students will choose faculty members with whom they've had a course. Certainly makes sense. I will tell you though that having watched our faculty operate, particularly in the theory and history area, there isn't that much difference really between the way one individual professor will behave during the exam as opposed to another one. So we don't have people who are real easy and people who are real hard. They're all about the same. Warn you too that the last weeks of the semester, for instance, the month of April, are very, very busy. And so if you have a choice of doing it earlier in the semester, you will have fewer scheduling problems, and it will alleviate some of the crowdedness that we have at the end of the schedule. So in the graduate studies in handbook, graduate studies in music handbook is on the website. Sometimes not as easy to find as we'd like. There is actually a lot of detailed information about the comprehensive exam in that handbook. And you will discover that, well, and you should notice, not each area does not necessarily examine exactly the same way. So it's important that you find your degree program and see what it has to say. But there is information there that will be helpful for you. So what is the exam like? Well, first of all, I would tell you that this is not adversarial. Right? The faculty would like for you to do well. It's in their best interest, because if you don't do well, then we'd have to do it again. So they hope that you will do well. And the atmosphere in the room is friendly, not adversarial, and frequently it is conversational. So the faculty will actually take turns asking questions. And occasionally, one faculty member may actually kind of piggyback on the question of another. I have seen faculty members get into a conversation about a particular topic, leaving the student kind of wondering what they're supposed to do. But you do have to remember that most of us have done this many, many times, and so we're not highly stressed when we come in. Now, you may feel some stress, but so this is just another thing that we're doing, you know, in that day. So my advice to you then is to, first of all, think about yourself. Some of you are very at ease talking to groups of people, and that's certainly a good thing and a good skill. Some of you are less comfortable with that. So you may want to find a practice partner who will ask you questions and give you the opportunity, you know, to create answers on the spot. I will tell you from my experience that there have been times when I felt sure that the student who was sweating there in their chair knew the information, but they were not able to put it together and get it out. And so, you know, so we didn't have a good outcome. You have to know the information, but you also have to be able to present it. Occasionally people say, well, why don't we just go have some kind of a written exam? In most professional situations, you will be judged by the way you can articulate about your art face to face with other human beings. This has traditionally been one of those ways that we measure the professional competence of someone. And so having an oral examination then is pretty much the way that society judges you as well. So I wouldn't expect to see a written exam anytime soon. We do talk about the comprehensive exam from time to time with our graduate committee about whether it's accomplishing what we want it to do. Maybe you know, should there be written components, this sort of thing. And we'll be happy to hear your ideas after you graduate, should you have some. Again, the point I would like to make here is that the faculty does not see this as an adversarial situation. We want you to do well. You should obviously prepare for this. And you are allowed to talk to your committee members to see whether they can suggest areas of study. Some will be more specific than others. But that at least is how we have done things here at this university. But we do want you to do well, and we will do what we can for you during the exam. But it is important that you also be as prepared as you can be. Anything else I should speak to?
I think you covered a whole lot of it, and it's very helpful to see this from this philosophical point of view. Why do we do this, and what actually happens? So,
so at this point, we'll let Tracy talk to you about how you actually schedule this thing, and then the aspects of this that she sees from her perspective. Good luck to all of you. Some of you I will see up close and personal in this event. Others I'll only sign the letter when you pass, right? And I'll look forward to that too.
Thank you so much.
So if a lot of you will remember in the very first meeting that we had right before you started classes in the summer for your first semester, I think we said there's a form for everything. There's a form for scheduling comps. There's a lot of people in the room that I see that's already turned one in. I wasn't expecting a crowd quite this large. So if you've already turned one in, don't take it. We know some people haven't, so just pass it around. So the first thing you've got to do is you've got to form your committee. And your committee has to be 3 from your major area, plus 1 history and 1 theory. And you should really talk with your major professor about who you should ask. I can't give you any advice on that. So talk to your major professor about who you should ask, and then ask those people if they're willing to serve, because they're not obligated. They're doing you a favor. So ask them first if they will be on the committee. Then come see me for the form. Like Dr. Gowan said, in the master's program, it's usually your last semester. In the doctoral program, it's somewhere around your last year. But our best advice is do not, if you can help it, don't do comps and your document defense in the same semester. Do your comps one semester, and defense the second semester, or the last semester. But come see me for the form, and then the form, as you'll see, will have you select a range of dates. So a range of dates is usually like a week span. And I like to have a first, second, and third choice, because your first choice doesn't always work out. And it's just the reality that the history and theory faculty have totally different schedules from the ensemble directors or your applied professors, and their schedules don't always mesh. So I've been through 5 or 6 rounds of this with students before we actually get a date. So don't panic. I promise you we'll get it scheduled. It just may not happen when you want it the very first time. And the other thing is, make sure you leave yourself enough time. We all want you to pass the first go round, but if you don't, you get 1 more shot. So make sure you leave yourself enough time for a retake if you want to graduate in that semester. There is information, some of Dr. Gowan, what he spoke about, like the program of study, the doctoral committee forms and all that. There's information on that page, on the second page of that. They'll let you know where to find that, where to find those, and how to fill them out, turn them in. There is information, some of Dr. Gowan, what he spoke about.
Is your document committee and your orals committee the same committee?
Doesn't have to be. Your defense committee only has to be 4 people. So it has to be 3 from your major plus an outside. The outside can be a history or a theory, or it can be somebody on campus if it's relative to your topic. So doesn't have to be.
Can you say that one more time? The defense committee, what does that mean?
It's 4 people. Comps is 5, defense is 4. 3 from your major plus an outside.
And then my question was, if we have a minor on it, and how do we do that on the committee?
If you're a doctoral student and you have a doctoral minor, you will have an additional written portion. Okay, so doctoral students have to do written comps as well as orals. Written comps are 3 portions of 3 hours each. If you have a doctoral minor, you have 4 portions of 3 hours each. And so whatever your minor area is, there has to be a representative of that area on your committee as well. So if your minor area is history or theory, that person can serve representing your minor area. But if it's like, if you're a voice person and it's choral conducting, you've got to have a choral conducting person on your committee as well, so you'd have 6 in that as well. So if your minor area is history,
So here, master's in history, so that means I need at least 3 history professors in one day, or?
yeah, history's a little bit different. So yeah, you need 3 from history plus a theory. So you, in your case, you would only have 4. I think theory works the same way.
How early and how late can we schedule?
Late as in.
How much in advance?
Yeah. That's a good question. So faculty don't know their teaching schedules in the semester before you want to do your comprehensive exam. So like right now, you can't schedule for fall. There's no way they're going to know what their availability is going to be for fall. So you can schedule it as far in advance as you want to in that semester. So, you know, if we came back the first day of January, we schedule for the last day of April, we could go ahead and get started on that. Like right now, you can't schedule for fall. There's no way they're going to know what their availability is for fall. So you can schedule it as far as
Even if you cannot officially schedule, sometimes for a history of your president, is another way of thinking about it. You might not schedule, but oftentimes if you know you're coming, you keep an eye out, or hey, I got this many students who may want to schedule in the fall, or you can just say, hey, I'm not going to be here in the fall, so we'll do your choice. Yeah, if you can't officially schedule that early, letting us know helps you guys a lot. So you have other options, or to just know, let us know so we can be looking out for you, as opposed to everybody showing up right before you have to schedule. We'll know yourself out there. And in some cases, we can start giving you prep assistance because we know, hey, I might need to have, might be on my schedule.
I also like to introduce Dr. Brigitte Johnson, who is also on the history and mythology faculty. And she's here to provide her perspective. I have one more thing I like to kind of this technical thing. So we're broadcasting this through YouTube Live, and I hear something from the screen which suggests that the people who are watching it might have their mics on. So we'll be hearing. Hi guys, what your chatter. So if you could either turn the mic off or be very quiet. Thank you so much for following us.
This is really specific to what I have to do, but there's not 3 organ faculty here to. Do I need to do 2 organ faculty and a piano person?
Yes, you do. You will have to have a keyboard person there.
So this is by area: woodwind, brass.
Yes.
Piano,
Yeah,
keyboard,
percussion,
strings.
conducting, strings.
If we've only taken one history of theory class all year for masters, and that teacher wants a medical, are we allowed to have someone on our committee that we've never had as a professor?
Absolutely. Like Dr. Gowan said, they're perfectly interchangeable. Obviously, you're more comfortable with who you had a class with, but yeah, they'll be glad to help you out. You just need to ask them, let them know what your situation is.
My program of study has changed since I submitted it. How can I update it, or do I have to resubmit a whole new one?
No, you don't need to resubmit a whole new one. If you go back to the graduate school's website in their forms library, there's a form called Program of Study Adjustment Form. It's not a real great form, if I'm honest, but it has 2 columns. It has a delete column and it has an add column. So anything that has changed, you're going to delete it off and replace it with the corrected version, even if it's just a semester, that kind of thing. Because what's going to happen when you go to graduate, the graduate school will do a clearance sheet. And when they look at your program of study, they're going to go, well, they didn't take that class in spring 2018 like they said they were going to. So anything that's changed about what you put on there originally, take it off and then re-add it. That kind of thing. Because what's going to happen when you graduate school will do a clearance sheet. And when they look at your program of study, they're going to go, well, they didn't take that class in spring 2018 like they said they were going to.
So you need signed by every person?
No, you don't. You just have to list them.
Just listen.
Just list them, yes. And if y'all are like first semester, first year people, don't think you have to hold on to that form. You can come back and get it when it's time.
Any other questions? Yeah, well, please, oh, yes.
Just, how long are these exams?
An hour.
No.
We'll talk more about one.
Yeah.
Please, thanks. Thank God. Okay, so John and I have prepared some slides. So we'll go through the slides with pointers and short description of what things are. Yeah, so you can, actually, if you have any questions about what you see, please don't be shy to ask questions. Dr. Johnson, if you have something to chime in, please do so. And let's move on. So how many of you have taken an exam like this before, like oral exam? Okay, 1, 2, 3. Not too many, right? Okay, good. So let's talk a little bit through this. Okay, so before the exam, so these are some of the things that we want to do. This is all something that Tracy here has already told you. So secure your committee, 3 for your area history theory, and then what Dr. Johnson said that you can always start it early on to figure out who you want to ask for. Pick a date. This is a very important point. So once you have a date, or even you know kind of about what date you want to do, meet with members of the committee several times, especially with the theory and history professors, because even though every one of you have to go through this exam, individual professors, individual instructors have very different approach to how they kind of do the testing, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, just saying, Dr. Gallen mentioned that there's nobody, I think, that's really easier or harder necessarily amongst us. I mean, maybe some people have opinions about this, but I mean, I think, but we do have different sort of philosophies about like how we might ask you to study, you know, how specific we might be about the kinds of advice we give on what to study or how to approach the exam. So definitely being in touch with your committee members early, particularly in history and theory, but I mean also particularly for some of you in your major areas, different of your professors may have different philosophy about the way they do these things too. So it's good to just be in communication early about this stuff. And some members may want to meet with you a few times just to kind of like, you know, give you an initial meeting, sort of find out about like who you are. Particularly, somebody had asked about, you know, if you haven't actually had a class with the professor, if you haven't, a person that you would like to have, you had a class with is unavailable or whatever, it may be good just to sort of get to know you, find out, you know, what classes you've taken, and some people may want to meet with you a couple times just to sort of, you know, give you some advice and sort of see how you're doing in terms of studying. So,
and everybody I know is glad to see all of you, right?
Yes,
rather than not seeing you until the day of the exam.
We would much prefer to be in contact with you beforehand than to show up and like throw a question at you and have you kind of stare at us like we have no idea what you're talking about. So,
and of course, if you're out of town, you could be here all the time. Email exchange is always good. These meetings should not, you know, it could be 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 30 minutes. You know, it's not a huge task, so I encourage you to take this opportunity because not everybody is willing to do this. Yes.
And also, when you come meet with us, oftentimes we can give you a heads up on the scope of the exam. So, for example, people who meet with me, you've probably taken a college class with me, and so walking out your music history will be geared to what you've done in my course, as opposed to tell me that history wasn't art music. And so, walking out when you meet in advance, often we're getting the scope of it, or in some cases, for some areas, their oral exams are very close to a job interview. And so they'll ask you things that you actually hear in a job interview. I hear that a lot about your presenting area. So they actually think about repertoire and you're able to respond just like you would in a job situation. So the questions might go that way. So definitely, even before you, in the case of when you will see us, it's never too early to see us. Even if you don't have it scheduled with Tracy yet, just because of the timetable, if we, like I said, we know you're coming, we can either talk to you about the scope of it, give you an idea so it can kind of demystify the process, because that's what stress from not knowing what you're supposed to be doing for these exams. But you see this early enough, you can say, hey, look at this piece of repertoire, make sure you consider this, go back and find your notes, because some of you have taken exams. You haven't taken classes in over a year. For some of you who hadn't had a lot of classes here because you transferred in or you came in on the doctoral level. So marking that, seeing where you are and where we are, what we've been, give you an exam situation, that might be helpful to do this early on, even before you have it locked in. Tracy's office as far as exactly you taking exams. So sooner the better, keep your communication going. And like President Hart said, some people might require to see one meetup, others might say, hey, meet me twice. And that's mostly to prepare you, so you don't be in that room staring at us or us trying to pull it out of you and you're freaking out and sweating about the thing. We don't want that. We want it to be very relaxing and calming. So more often than not, the people that we see the most before the actual exam date, they do far better than others who basically just show up and then have to figure out what's going to happen.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, about scope, one thing that is different, as Dr. Johnson mentioned a little bit, is that I think that some faculty members tend to really focus in on material that you cover in particular courses with them, and other faculty members take a sort of broader approach often. And so, yeah, meeting with us will give you a sense of like what kind of approach we expect to do. And
I encourage you to talk to other students who are taking exams, but also meet with us because I'm sure some of the information is exaggerated. Okay, at the meetings, these are some pointers from sitting through exams, and we have several suggestions. So we actually come to see us, right? So make sure you have a list of courses you've taken. I think that's very important. A list of courses you've taken here, a list of courses you've taken before another institution to give us a sense of what you know and what your strengths are. Explaining your strong and weak areas. Ask for the scope of an exam. These are the things we talked about. Ask for the types of questions you should expect. And I think try to get as much information from us is the good thing to do. You have any numbers?
I mean, I would just say, yeah, in terms of the types of questions, I mean, again, people may be very different in terms of what their suggestions are. And for that, I mean, some people I know, both in your major areas and in history and theory, might give you like particular guidance for particular kind of sets of questions or things to know, like a set of composers that might come up, or a set of whatever. So you might be able to get that kind of information from some professors. Some might give you kind of broader suggestions. So just asking for like what kind of questions. Yeah. So,
don't be shy.
Yeah. We're happy to talk.
And discuss how you might study for these kinds of exams, because we often have ideas on how successful cases are not. Asking for like what kind of questions.
And again, if you do have questions as we're going, please interact.
And once you're out of the meeting, with your family, with friends, and I think it's very important, like Dr. Gowan said, that for you to be able to articulate, talk, verbalize what you are studying, what you are spending years at school for. So this is a very important skill, and it's a skill that you have to practice, right? So you can't just expect to study a lot and come to the meeting and somehow you have beautiful like speeches coming out of your mouth. So it doesn't happen. You have to practice it. And you can practice this by finding classmates who are in the same situation, quiz each other, try to explain what you study. You can also do this with your family members. This is actually a very good exercise because sometimes, many of your family members are also musicians, but I'm sure you have non-musical family members. And to be able to explain what you're doing to non-specialists is a special skill. And I think doing that will be a good exercise in being able to clearly articulate what you want to say. And if you're shy, you can also use your pad.
Or you can record yourself actually sort of trying to explain something and look at yourself, which is often a kind of interesting experience.
Yeah, it's like preparing for a recital. You do a run through. You just don't practice scales and expect for things to magically happen. You have rehearsals, you have dress rehearsals, you go on stage and practice. Sometimes some people, put their outfit they perform to kind of figure out how things work out. So approach it as such.
Yeah, particularly if you haven't done an oral exam before. I mean, just it's again, Dr. Gowan, as you mentioned, we're not there to be confrontational. So we're trying to put you at ease, but many people are not at ease when they go into a situation like this because it's new, it's not familiar. So the more kind of practice you can have beforehand of some sort, whatever it is, can ultimately help you kind of just adjust and be more at ease.
And oftentimes, students know much more than they think they know. In my experience, there's lots of hesitation expressing, explaining. At the exam, so this is the basic outline. So Tracy said an hour. It's typically 50 minutes because the faculty will kick you out of the room after the exam, and we have to have a conversation among us to figure out to kind of determine the grade of the exam. So typically, you have 50 minutes of Q&A. Because there are 5 examiners, typically each examiner will take 10 minutes. So that means 30 minutes for your major area, 10 minutes for theory, 10 minutes for history. Although this breakdown might differ from committee to committee.
And
we have that experience.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it can break down differently, and also the order that this happens can also vary. I mean, sometimes you get a committee member who has to leave, can't be there for the whole time or whatever. So like, it won't. A lot of times the major area wants to sort of go first, and then history and theory sort of comes at the end. But it really depends on what the.
Yeah, but I guess the important point is that you have like 10 minutes to talk about music theory, 10 minutes to talk about music history. So it's not. Maybe it's a good thing, but it's also a difficult task.
It's a difficult task, but also, I mean, 10 minutes go very fast when your pulse is racing. It's not like when you don't know something, it seems to go very slow. But if you're doing sort of well and you're having conversations or whatever, I mean, like that you may really only end up answering a few questions, like in detail. You might start answering a question, then you might get a little back and forth, and then suddenly the 10 minutes is up. So it can go very quickly too.
Quickly, and another thing is that you will not be able to talk about everything you've studied for this exam. Right? So you can expect that.
Actually, I should relate to that. I mean, for those of you doctoral students, if you have a written exam portion, and if you're doing a doctoral minor that relates to like history or theory too, that can be something that it varies from committee to committee how much that comes up within the exam. Like it will always be a subject. How you did on the written exam will come up in some form, but some committees may end up sort of discussing like the deficiencies or asking you more about things that you missed on the written portion. And some will just go in completely different directions, or ask you about some things that you didn't talk about at all. So that can vary a lot for doctoral students.
Yes.
And also the actual, I guess, performance of the exam questions, where you have 10 minutes to answer the questions. When the question comes out of the person's mouth, it's okay to pause and think about what they just asked you. You don't have to immediately start talking. Because 10 minutes is actually longer than you think it is. So basically, you won't be mad or upset if you just kind of take a moment. Some people even say, "I take a moment to think about it." And in some cases, you can bring paper to kind of write your thoughts out. So it don't take too long. But still, you can pause and steady yourself, particularly if you know you're nervous in this kind of situation, just to order your thoughts as well as to kind of get at everything. Some questions are 2-parters or 3-parters, so you want to make sure you give enough time for each part of the question. So you can take that 10 seconds to kind of get it together and then answer. We don't expect you to kind of, regurgitate the answer for it. And more often than not, if you are nice and deciduous with your time and answer the whole question, we usually just move on to the next thing. And it really makes you having to come back and remind you or need you or whatever. Take that little breath, take a sip of water. You can even water, some snacks, whatever, but not a lot. Shot of coffee, drink your coffee, tea, water, whatever. Just probably not coffee at that time, but just water. And just take a moment. For the most part, that's gonna help you, calming you down when you're answering the question. By the time you get to the second one, you're ready. But that first one is kind of a little.
It's not Jeopardy,
Yeah.
So that's the first thing that's on the list of things that we recommend. We're on the same wavelength. Take time to organize your thoughts before speaking. Explain that. This is hard to do. I do it all the time. I have to fix it myself. And this is, when you record this, it's very good. You will be surprised how many times you say, like. So.
We're not really going to be judging you too much on this sort of thing, but it's just a matter of just being professional in your presentation style will help to just, help you do well. I do it too, I just said So we all have these kind of tics that we tend to say.
Like you said, it's about appearing professional, speaking professional. Use plain English. You don't have to be very creative about it. Or you don't have to seem erudite by using difficult words. In other words, use precise terminology, because we know you have all this vocabulary of musical terms. Use them correctly, but correctly, but you don't have to be very fancy about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's the correct, I think that's part of the reason why we have this point up here too, is just avoiding using terms. If you're not quite sure what, you vaguely remember a term or whatever, don't just like randomly throw it in and think that'll be okay. We will call you on it. And ask you, to explain what do you mean by this term, and then you need to be able to do that.
Yeah.
If you're not quite sure what.
This does happen, and I mean, sometimes unintentionally, because the people don't remember facts. But sometimes in moment of panic, people do make up facts, which is not good.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't know something, it's okay. There will be questions sometimes where you just don't remember the answer to something, and that happens. If that happens, you don't try to make something up that you think might be along the lines of something. I mean, you can perhaps offer something, that I remember it relates to something that you don't remember the exact answer, but it's okay to say I don't know sometimes too. If you really don't know, don't try to just make something up. That's this is I mean, I've seen this many times. It's just, it doesn't give a good impression.
You laugh at yourself. Answer the questions you were asked.
So yeah.
Say it one more time.
Answer the question you were asked.
Yeah, so this is something Dr. Johnson mentioned a bit about taking a little bit of time to prepare and think about what you're actually asking. Sometimes you hear some words or you hear something that you think you know what they were asking, and you haven't really processed the whole question, and you start just sort of launching out on something else. But sometimes also I think students feel like they don't quite know the answer to this question, but maybe I'll try to answer a different question that's sort of like that, and maybe that'll be okay. And sometimes it sort of is okay, and sometimes we kind of go along with you for that, but if it's not actually answering the kind of thing we're really getting at, we will call you on it. So do pay attention to the details, take a little time to pause and think about it, and make sure you're asking exactly the details. And sometimes we may just jump in and sort of ask, clarify at some point. If you start launching up in a different direction from what we were expecting, we will try to steer you back.
Yeah. And either, I mean, when we observe this, we think, oh, the student does not understand the question, which is a problem. Oh, the student is trying to deflect the question, which is also a problem. So there's no. I think it boils down to do not be afraid to say I don't know if you don't know a question. But at that moment, you might be able to say, I don't know this particular question, but here's a related phenomenon. A different thing that I think it is related, not exactly answering a question, but let me talk about this. And that might give us a sense of, oh, okay, so student is able to understand what he or she knows or not know, but able to kind of extrapolate from the question a related topic. And this is a good thing.
And I would say that a lot of times, I mean, these are, general purpose exams. We're trying to often get a sense of what you know overall, not necessarily very minute facts. I mean, again, it can vary from committee member to committee member, and there of course are going to be certain essential facts that people expect you to know. But nevertheless, we're trying to get a general sense usually of that you have a broad knowledge. And so being able to say, I don't know this, but I know it's related to this other thing, and then maybe we'll ask you to talk about that other thing, or something like that can happen, and that can be helpful to us.
And another thing that, like you say, this will differ from professor to professor, but when I am in an exam situation, I will give a range of questions that I think are easy, and then more difficult and very difficult. To figure out where the limit of your knowledge. And so it is not unusual for you to receive a question that seems to be more difficult than the others. There's sometimes I don't know is the right answer.
Yeah, I mean, there are some faculty members, I think, whose goal is to kind of do that kind of gradually increasing to find out how much you do know. And they will keep sort of digging until they find out that you don't know something. And that's okay. They're just sort of like seeing how far you can go with something. And again, it's not usually confrontational. It's just sort of meant to kind of find out, how deep you can go and how broad your knowledge is. Gradually increasing to find out how much you know. And they will keep sort of
build on what you already know. I guess this is advice for when you study, understanding how much you know and trying to augment that, but also fill in the gaps. But also, this is a good way to grow on your experience when you're.
Yeah, and if you're in an exam, I mean, this I think maybe also relates to kind of broad questions. Faculty members, again, will vary a lot in terms of the way they pose questions. They might be a very broad question, give 3 examples of something in the 19th century or something. And in this case, those kinds of questions where there's an opportunity to, or even a question that's on a more specific topic, can you define this term? You can give a definition of this term, and if the faculty member is still like looking at you to get more, then you can sort of say, well, I know that this term relates to this piece because, well, you can sort of go in that direction because it's something that you kind of connect into that. So being able to kind of show that you are able to make those kind of connections is often something that we can adapt. You can see that you have a deep knowledge in the material.
Then you can sort of say, well, I know that this term relates to this again is like if I can find it here, I know something. So if I know where the source to find this,
well, it depends on the question, but it does show you something, like what you know. So use every single opportunity to show off your knowledge. That's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, and whether that's satisfactory to the particular faculty member will depend on the situation. Yeah. I mean, that might be enough to sort of, you know where you can find this, but then they might sort of change tack and sort of start asking something different.
Obviously, you can't say, you can Google it. This particular book that you have in mind, I think this might be included in this book of history of by this author.
Very specific.
Okay. Obviously, you can't say Google it. Present yourself professionally. What does this mean?
Dress up.
Yes. Look professional. Yeah, you don't have to wear tails, but
you don't have to dress up ridiculously, but definitely look, organized, presentable.
And then again, greet each member of the committee. It's a human thing, right? And then also. You don't have to. But.
Often at the end of the exam, assuming you do well, which we hope you many of the committee members will actually come up and sort of raise your hand. No, you don't need to go in and sort of shake everybody's hand. You can sort of say hi. Hi.
Yes. Is bringing snacks for committee members customary?
No. Influence us either. I think sometimes people. I was at an exam somebody brought a pound cake. I shouldn't have said that because now people are going to. No, don't. It is not. You can't bribe us. That's not how we determine that.
I'd rather you spend that time and money that you have, paid to purchase the item to use for yourself. Buy a shirt. Oh God. Study hard and good luck. Okay. Do you have any Q&A at this point? Do you have anything to? Yes.
So most stressful part for me is after the exam waiting for an answer. Will we find out immediately?
Yeah.
If you pass?
Yeah, generally speaking, I mean, we will ask you, usually, as we said, the exam will be about 50 minutes long. It might run a little bit longer, but basically we intend to allow 5 to 10 minutes at the end for that determination. So you'll be asked to step out of the room, and then you will find out immediately.
Yeah, it's very quick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tracy said it before, but I want to say it again, just make sure we emphasize for our doctoral students, do not or strongly try to avoid taking your comp exams in the same semester as your defense. Those are the two heavy things, and try to do it at the same time. You may not have your hair at the end. Scheduling gets to be a problem as well, so try to keep those as far apart as possible. You can't defend your document before you take your comp anyway, but definitely do watch out for that. And that's what we say, allow for time, because scheduling for the actual professors usually takes a couple of rounds. And so if you're doing both of those exam things and defense things, it really just becomes a traffic jam, and stress-wise, it's really hard to prepare for both. It's one something you work on it like a document, and the other one is also multiple exams. So just try to avoid that at all costs. Look out for that. Try to avoid that. Can't say enough.
Yeah, as Dr. Gowan mentioned too, related to that, we tend to get a lot of people who want to do things like in late April or in April, you know, and so if it's at all possible, if you're trying to just kind of, it'll just be more difficult. You may have to go through more rounds of scheduling to figure out something if you push things off to the very last minute. And plus, if any things go bad and you really want to graduate, it can cause problems in terms of trying to reschedule something if you need to do a recheck.
Did we talk about rescheduling?
I think you mentioned something briefly about it. I mean, but basically, yeah. If and again, this doesn't happen very often, but sometimes people don't do well in sometimes it's individual portions of the exam. But to reschedule, we have to all meet as a committee again, and that means that we have to go through another round of scheduling to do that, and that can be very difficult, particularly if it's happening in April and then you want to reschedule something. People leave for the summer. Faculty members, may not be around, and so it may be difficult to sort of reconvene that. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. I mean, again, we all hope that you do well, but
yes.
And music history, every faculty in the fall, oftentimes we have conference time.
Yeah.
So there's certain blocks in the late part of the fall where none of us are going to be here. We're all off either AMS or AM or S&T. So just be mindful when we talk about all these schedules or juggling. It's usually because we physically aren't here at certain parts of the semester. So the earlier you start, the best. We can actually kind of say, well, I won't be here on that Thursday, but I'll be here Wednesday. I'm going to let you know if we know in advance.
If you didn't pass part of the exam, would you repeat the entire process or just the part that you missed?
Just the part that you missed.
Are we standing or are we sitting?
You're sitting. At a round table, you'll be sitting at a table with everybody else sitting.
I mean, occasionally.
We'll talk more. Yes.
Okay, at the end of the exam, we find out if we passed or failed. What other documentation will we have? Do we have like notes of what our strong points were or weak points or?
You would not receive official document typically, but individual professor might want to talk to you afterward.
Yeah, I mean, there is a space for in the forms as faculty. We all have to sign a form that signs off that we pass you, and there will be there's a space for comments there, and some people do leave comments occasionally, but and those guys I think they written directly through Dr. Gowan, I believe.
Yeah, I think it goes to office.
Yeah, no, that doesn't go directly to you, but I think the comments that we write on there might get conveyed indirectly. But yeah, so some, as Dr. Harris says, some faculty members may want to talk to you a little bit afterward about how you did. But generally speaking, we shake your hand and say, good job.
There isn't a separate form that you have to fill out after you pass, right? Once I pass, you guys tell me I passed.
You get a letter.
Yeah, you will get a letter from Dr.
But I don't
Gowan.
have to do anything to submit to graduate school.
No, I don't think you need.
No.
But you should ask.
There's a form for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, once you pass, I think basically you will receive a letter after that from Dr. Gowan that sort of says you have passed your.
Takes care of making sure that I'm allowed to.
If you're worried, please ask.
Yeah, Tracy is the person to kind of ask if you have any concerns about that kind of stuff.
Another person that we get, yes.
With scheduling, if it becomes impossible to avoid, to find like a common ground where you don't have the professor doesn't have something, like would skipping a class be like an excuse in order to do that? If it were like if there were no other option, would you need to find like what?
Well, it's not ideal. It has happened sometimes, frankly, but I mean, yeah, it's not ideal. And I mean, that's something you have to talk individually with the professor that you want to, you know, be excused from class. Yeah, but sometimes if you've been through a few rounds of this and that's the only thing that can happen, it has happened. Well, it's not ideal. It has happened sometimes, frankly.
I forgot who mentioned that we could bring paper. Are there any other materials that we can bring?
Sometimes if you've been through a few rounds of this,
Just loosely paper.
Yeah. Especially step out with extra accessories. You know, some people won't even bring paper, they know they can just speak, you know, clear or whatever, but keep it still simple.
Okay, so we're out of time. We have the room for 30 more minutes, so you can come up and talk to us or have some of the snacks. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and make sure everybody signed in. There should be one more sign sheet. Thank you. If you have not signed in, please do so.
Have some snacks on the way out.
Have snacks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Unless you have a minor. Thank you.